I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, what's up, world? Welcome back again to another edition of I Mix What I Like Live, right here on Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball, very happy to be your host and to get into this conversation that I think is a little bit, at least from my perspective, a little bit overdue of this work here. Bitcoin in Black America by Isaiah Jackson, which apparently has been doing very well, getting a lot of attention. I've seen a number of his interviews, finally got a chance to read the book. And I think on the one hand, I'm tempted to say this will be this for me, I think could be a wrap on the conversation. But I know it won't be, because, you know, as is the case with buying power, everything else will continue to cover the stories as they come out. But I think this pretty much, if it wasn't clear already, sort of for me satisfies and kind of closes the door, at least sort of clarifies what lane everything is happening in. So I definitely want to, again, I appreciate those who have jumped back over here from the one the live we just did with Dr. Todd Stephen Burrows. Please go check that out if you haven't seen it. If you're seeing this one later or hearing this on your favorite podcast platform later, please go check that out. And we have to do more with him. I'm constantly wanting, for a couple of years, he was part of a regular crew of us doing a radio show, which was really, and for even a couple of years before that, he was my literal next office door neighbor at Morgan State. So there was like this window of I was just spoiled at how much Dr. Todd Stephen Burrows I had access to. And now I kind of have a withdrawal. It's kind of crazy. So, and definitely thanks everybody for coming through again. So appreciate you jumping over here. Please invite others to do the same, whether they're doing it live now or later on. Okay, so there's actually a lot I'd like to get to, and then I'm also very tempted to. I'll have to do this another time. Maybe we even work it into the remix this week. I don't know, but I just saw a conversation on that they dropped on Math Hoffa's platform about race and class and economics, and I so desperately wanted to work it in. It could have fit in with the conversation we just had about Sidney Poitier. It could definitely fit into this one, but it probably deserves its own conversation. So for all that I disagree, again, I don't expect that he pays me any attention or would at any point, but I'm a big fan of Math Hoffa. I encourage people to check out his platform to get another view into some of the ways conversations like we have here are happening elsewhere. And why, again, I think what we're doing here at BPM is so important and necessary. Okay. So the first thing I just want to say very clearly about whatever I'm going to say going forward about this book, Bitcoin in Black America, I don't read this, and I don't mean to sort of even what I was saying about Poitier. I'm more interested in the context in which people are being forced to work than them as individuals. So this is not about, I'm not arguing at all that Jackson, even with my jokes about, like whoever we joke about or whoever we really have serious disagreements or I have serious disagreements with. This isn't even at that level. Like I'm certainly not arguing those folks are sort of the enemy or the problem. And I'm certainly not saying that of Jackson. And I don't think he's an enemy. I don't even think he's a hustler, as I think of some others out here in these spaces. But I think he's just been woefully misguided by a tradition of Black capitalism that, as I and others have been arguing for a while now, has been propagated and imposed on Black people in this country in a very particular way. It has been part of a design to keep Black people out of political, radical political organizing, or to keep Black people from making serious attempts at assuming actual power. So as I've talked about in other, for a long time, there has been a desire to uh, encourage Black entrepreneurialism, Black capitalism, Black business as a solution to problems that are constantly reimposed on Black communities. And from my own personal perspective, and as I will continue to argue, the internal colonial model is best at uh, uh, evolving an analysis, even today, even with all the shifts in racial category and definition, and the fundamental relationship of imposing identities, imposing relationships of extraction and exploitation, of spatial, geographic, and cognitive and cultural segregation, isolation, uh, to create points of entry for the colonizer to go and mine and extract, or to go for the purposes of play and fun, whether it is literal, where white folks literally go into Black and brown communities to have fun with the uh Aimé Césaire used to talk about this as well, into the space where all of the horrors of society are magnified and imposed, and then you can go in there and play a little bit, dabble, and then dip. Or culturally, where, shout out to the recently passed Greg Tate, white people can culturally play in Blackness, go into the colonized space and adorn the performance, at least, and then dip. All of those relationships, I think, still exist and are going on today, and are, if anything, only magnified, or only made more, or I should say, only made more sophisticated by new technology. And representation of the problem. Okay, so that I want to start by making that point, hopefully, at least, and then I'm just going to skip to, and then I'll come back and go through more carefully. But I just want to skip to what Jackson writes on page 52 at the start of chapter 2, and what he subtitles the 21st century economy. And this is where I'm arguing and sort of where I don't know, for some different reasons, it just became more clear to me that this is I don't know why it wasn't before, or maybe it was and I just wasn't thinking of it in this way. I don't know exactly what was going on, but it just became kind of, he is in the Black capitalist, Black entrepreneurial tradition. I think more, even as I look back on it, more than the lack of followers that Reggie Middleton would later say online was required, the 20,000 threshold. BPM is at 13,000. So shout out to all the new subscribers to the channel. Welcome. And, invite a friend, tell a friend, as your doctor says. So anyway, Reggie Middleton said that I don't know if the platform would count for this, but whoever he would debate would have to have at least 20,000 followers. So I don't have that individually or collectively as with this platform. But I think the other reason for him not responding to his initial reaching out, by the way, was that we are just not, there's almost no reason to debate unless the debate is Black capitalism versus some other form of radical response to the situation, because a specific debate about cryptocurrency or Bitcoin would be useless, because ultimately what is being argued is black capitalism versus uh, whatever other form that we would want to take, or that I would want to propose, socialism, radical, revolutionary, national, whatever other ism we would want to propose or I would want to be involved in, it has nothing to do with anything other than a critique of black capitalism. But that's the lane that they're in. So he starts chapter 2 by saying the black community has a rich history of entrepreneurship. This is a line I've read and seen and seen spoken so many times in so many different spaces, in so many different places. It's almost like I'm not accusing him of this, but it is almost as if he's just copying and pasting. During the years between 1900 and 1930, we entered what historian Juliet Walker called the golden age of black business, because the number of businesses in the black community doubled, end quote. So this sort of gets to my point. So again, this is what I'm saying, that this is the lane he's in. He's saying black people have been doing entrepreneurialism. Black people have a tradition of black business. This is and it's in this context, or with this understanding, that we should now, as I'll get to, as he argues, get ourselves into Bitcoin. Okay. Now, as I said in the discussion with Dr. Todd Stephen Burrows regarding Portier just a few minutes ago, that Oprah would factor into this. So I want to be very clear. I have not read Dr. Walker's work. So all I am knowing of her is this and what I pulled up on this one website. So I don't mean this is not an assessment or critique of her work per se, specifically, or anything else about. But other than, I don't know the context of this quote, but if as I'll get to in a minute, if the point of the golden age of black business is because the number of businesses in the black community doubled, and this is some sort of attempt to claim, again, a golden age is in a height or a brilliance of a great moment. Of course, we know 1929, there's the broader collapse, which I'm sure wrecked a lot of that. But and that's why I'm sure she ends this at 1930 and he ends it at 1930. But this is this is really what I was getting at. The one thing I looked at where it says, because at least on this page, and I didn't find anything from this page to go from, it doesn't have anything about what her and this is about I would probably blame the university for this, because this is actually an issue with the numbers, about fully listing what people's work is, or has been. But when it says here, her research interests, she is engaged in a book-length project, Oprah Winfrey, an American Entrepreneur, for the Harvard Business School Press. So forgive me, this is not the best method for making a conclusion about someone's work, but when I take that fact, or that claim or fact, and what is quoted here, I just am suspicious that her politics lend towards this idea that black capitalism and black entrepreneurialism and black business is, or has been, a viable solution to the conditions of black people. I don't know. But back to Isaiah Jackson here. He says, going forward on the very next page, we have started a new golden era of black business, with over 400% growth in black businesses in 2018. Our ancestors had no way to predict that one day we could have sovereign money that doesn't require permission, but I can almost guarantee they would use Bitcoin if given the chance 80 years ago. So there's a number of I think both factual and theoretical errors in just that one paragraph from page 53. But I will, let's see. only point out at least one or two. First, as I continue to cite and am happy to have played even the smallest role in its production. And I will definitely put all of these in the show notes, links to all of this again in the show notes for sure. But if let's see, let's see. Um, this issue of going and speaking to both Dr. Walker's point and Walker's point about the 1900s and Jackson's point about this new golden age. Remember that in this paper, this small little essay or paper that I again am very proud to have played at least some role in helping to create. As it points out, Black entrepreneurship greatly increased between 1992 and 2012 from 3.6% of all firms to 10%. That is, and also that is more than 2 million jobs, Black owned businesses, not jobs, 2 million Black owned businesses were created in that time period, going from 3.6 of all businesses to 10%. Yet, even with Black entrepreneurship increasing almost threefold, the proportion of Black revenue decreased from 1% to 0.5%. Also, during this time period, the Black median income did not increase with Black entrepreneurship. In fact, median Black household income only increased by just over $3,500 after sharply declining in 2000 and again in 2007. So again, the point for me being here, any claim that an era that sees a rise in the number of Black businesses is a so-called golden era is missing many points, not the least of which is having more businesses does not increase income, does not increase certainly collective wealth, and does not even capture more of the total sales of any given year in the nation, throughout the nation. So in other words, that 3.6% to 10% increase in amount of the percentage of national businesses saw the Black community capture less of the national revenue spent, going from just 1% down to 0.5%. So even with an increase in Black business, the total money spent in the country on those Black businesses went down. Now, as this paper, and I've argued for, separately, there's a number of different reasons for that, starting with, of course, the fact that white ownership is dominant in the dominant sectors of the economy. That is, all the biggest businesses that make the most money are owned by whites. Black businesses target Black communities who have less money to spend, therefore spend less on those Black businesses. Those Black businesses cannot attract venture capital to expand and increase the way white businesses can, and so on. And again, as I want to continue to remind, even within a white supremacist capitalist society, most white businesses can't expand and succeed and are themselves monopolized or oligopolized by a handful of dominant entities. And at this point, if we look at the dominant institutional investors of almost everything, it's not even just about white, it's about like three people. It's or three small groups of people, BlackRock and Larry Fink at the head. So, okay. But the primary point that I'm getting at is that this is the lane Isaiah Jackson is in, and that most cryptocurrency, Bitcoin pushers and promoters and advocates find themselves in, because their broader argument is that's what will save us. That this is what will save us. He then goes into the same sort of mythology of the circulation of the black dollar, and makes these very unsupported, unsubstantiated, and if not unexplained comparisons to Koreans, Little Ethiopia, etc. Uh, um, uh, Not so much Jews this time, but that's often generally the comparison. And then these comparisons are not explored properly, if at all, as is the case here, and it's just sort of thrown out there. We don't circulate our money like they do. But because of the peer-to-peer payment system such as Bitcoin, it makes each person inherently entrepreneurial, because buyers and sellers can transact with or without a third party, and using Bitcoin, you don't need permission to start. So I'm going to come back to that again a little bit also, but because that's also misleading, just as it was, as I forgot to go back to in the previous page and paragraph, where he says that our ancestors had no way to predict that one day we could have sovereign money. And then he posits that Bitcoin is sovereign money. How something can be sovereign when a preponderance is already owned by others, when Black people do not have the ability to catch up through mining or investing, and when sovereign currency would require sovereignty politically, none of which is even discussed, much less shown to be possible in this book or in any of the other broader arguments I've seen around this issue. So, all right, but I just wanted to start there very quickly, or relatively quickly, or start with that point that there's a fundamental, I think, misunderstanding and regurgitation of Black capitalist mythology that centers and undergirds the argument here. All right, so oh, and as I noted here, as is the case, but I tend to think that when we hear people in these spaces making the arguments about freedom and sovereignty, what they're really meaning is not political freedom or sovereignty, but they mean free markets, the sovereignty of markets and the sovereignty of capital, maybe. They don't make the point explicitly, but I think that's ultimately what they mean, and I certainly think that that's how we should take it when we hear from them when they make these arguments. Because to understand is similar to my argument about buying power. To understand that power in the phrase buying power, to understand that in political terms, is to not understand it at all. And I think that that's where we are with this as well. So the book is a little over 150, 160 pages. It's not a difficult read. It's something that if you are either convinced that Bitcoin is necessary, this is a good summary of the popular arguments about why you should get in it. I don't think it argues those points well, but it's a good summary of those points. And if you want to read it to have a better idea of how come so many around you may be advocating Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, it's helpful there as well. And if you want to use it as a critical tool for teaching people around you the flaws in the argument or arguments that people are espousing or following into the Bitcoin or crypto arena, it's good for that as well. But he starts with, just by starting off, he literally says, "I was broke as shit." I think that's the first line. Yeah, I was broke as shit. And then he goes into saying, I needed a new way to find money. I looked into investments, and after the financial crisis of 2008, I said, I got to get into Bitcoin. And then he lays out what I also appreciate, which to sort of further buttress the initial point about his and the general approach. He outlines sort of who his sources are, who his guiding lights are. So, for instance, what led me to seeing Bitcoin as a viable option and starting to follow research. He looked at the Winklevoss twins. Sort of again, my point about how can it be sovereign money and be free in a political sense if it's already largely owned and creating billions for the same rich white men who are already rich and white and male. He says, I get a lot of, I try to even make a joke about this, which, to me is hilarious. I get a lot of flack in some cases for my reference, at least to Marx, but folks like this have no problem making reference to people like Max. And that is, of course, Max Keiser, who he says, I watched a video of Max Keiser on the Keiser report stating that Bitcoin would change the world. And that became another influence. The anonymous individual or group of people, Satoshi Nakamoto, is another of his influences. He mentions Silk Road, doesn't mention the founder by name, who oh man, I just did all this deep dive looking into him, Ross Ulbricht. But he mentions Silk Road. By the way, I do think that the fact that Russ Ulbricht is serving multiple life sentences in federal prison is suspicious. I don't think it means that Bitcoin is a revolution, but I think that even when middle class white boys show alternative communicative possibilities or can be blamed for what could be perceived as an abuse of these alternatives, I think there's something to be suspicious there. I don't think he got locked up because he was, promoting the use of Bitcoin and was threatening a revolution in that sense. But I think the ultra libertarian Ulbricht is similar to Assange, not deserving of the treatment that he's getting. But anyway, but my point here is that this is where the lane that sort of Jackson is flowing in. Chris Dunn, big time on YouTube, or relatively popular on YouTube for promoting Bitcoin and crypto investments. That's his guy. And so again, just letting you know. And in fact, he quotes Max Keiser in a most troubling way, because Keiser has comes up a lot, and I played his video not that long ago in his interview with Michael Hudson in their debate over crypto. And I've watched Max. I used to watch his show quite regularly, actually. Excuse me. He on page 31, Jackson writes, if any group of people should recognize how media can misrepresent you because they feel threatened, it should be the Black community, comparing to why Bitcoin is misrepresented. Bitcoin and the Black community are a match made in heaven. Even people outside of our community recognize the ability of the Black community to free themselves with Bitcoin. Max Keiser, host of the Keiser Report and notable white man. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh at that line. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That read is funny to me just now. Again, anyway. Max Keiser, host of the Keiser Report and notable white man, stated, quote, I told America's black community to load up on Bitcoin in 2011. If they had, they'd be able to buy the white community by now, end quote. There's no attribution for that quote, but I can't imagine in what context somebody could say that, uh, unless it was steeped in irony. Otherwise, I don't know what context that could be said and be taken seriously. Because again, it goes back to this old argument that has come up before, that we've talked about on this platform before, that black people are somehow oppressed because of bad investments, or a lack of financial literacy, or had Africans invested earlier in the slave trade, or had invested earlier in those insurance companies and banks. Maybe they too could be buying the. I mean, it just doesn't. It just doesn't. It. But again, that's why I started with even going out of order in terms of that quote in the book, because I wanted to start with where he is actually starting. That is Jackson, even though he doesn't lay it out until chapter 2. That he is in a black entrepreneurial capitalist lane. That through investments and a proper assessment and engagement with the markets, black people can become free. And so that's just a fundamental disagreement that we have. Okay. Now, so there's other things that he does in this book that I think are of. Let me just check here my notes here. So he talks a little bit about, in almost in a confusing way, he goes back and forth between Bitcoin being seen as currency or money, or as a long-term investment, and then which leads him to where I'm glad he has a section in here on at least. I mean, he goes through what is the blockchain, the underlying technology. And but he has a section in here that I think is important, even if I think it's not done correctly, where he talks about what gives Bitcoin value. Because one of the things that I keep trying to raise and find interesting is that on the one hand, if people are claiming it's a store of value because it is headed towards replacing the dollar as currency, then where are we seeing it actually function as currency? Whereas, as Jackson does also, if it's being considered also as a long-term investment, and its store of value, or that which will create its increase in value, is holding it over a longer period of time, either for it to eventually become adopted as currency, or for more to invest and use Bitcoin for personal or private transactions, and thus, increasing the value of it. Arguments are not entirely clear which is what is, and what is going to create the value, the long-term investment or its potential to be used as a currency. And what I keep trying to point out and want to raise questions around, at least, is that what allows the US dollar, to which Bitcoin is often compared as a potential replacement, its ability to be used as a currency is the result of political power, national, state, federal imposition, nationally and globally. And its value as such is backed in part, if not to a large extent, by it being supported by the federal government and its use by hundreds of millions of so-called Americans, or those imposed, those held, or as Kwame Ture say, hold the passport. So in other words, our continued use of it, the government's backing of it, its imposition of and force of it to be used, for instance, as for global exchange, the petrodollar, et cetera, and so on. All of that is political and is the result of political power that as Michael Hudson points out in his work, which is somehow confusingly used by Bitcoin supporters, not here, by others, as Max Keiser pointed out, as we in the video I showed last time, I think. What Hudson is keeps demonstrating is that it is governments and organized political power that either supports the dollar or will contravene or offer up something else vis-a-vis the China, Brazil, India, Iran, whoever. Not because people are investing in something other, not some other speculative currency or long-term investment. So you know what, I was gonna anyway. So I'm gonna stay on that point, but yeah, let me just stay on that point because I want to play something that, again, this is not a radical revolutionary. This is just something that I found in trying to do my own research on this. A video that, again, I'll put all the links in the show notes, because I'm only going to play a short clip of this, because as he says, it gets a little complicated. But in terms of why Bitcoin has value or does not have value, I just wanted to let me just, let's check this point out.
Really explain why Bitcoin went down in value, because isn't Bitcoin supposed to be a hedge against inflation? Why did it fall? Here's a few reasons why. When interest rates go up.
Right. So remember, we're one of the things that we're told here and elsewhere is that Bitcoin is something Black people should get involved in because because the US dollar, and this is what we were talking about with Hill Harper and all the US dollar is devalued constantly by inflation and by having more of it printed or digitally produced and put into the economy, so that those of us who are solely using dollars are losing value. So getting into Bitcoin, which does not lose value in that way, and in fact cannot lose value in that way. In fact, as Isaiah Jackson has said, I don't recall him saying it as directly here in his book as he does in a number of interviews, but he says that it is impossible to lose money by investing in Bitcoin because it cannot lose value because of the limited amount that are put in production that can ever be mined will only be 21 million. And then we already know that 3 million of that is already gone. So there will only ever be 18 million. So you don't, so they can never inflate the amount to devalue what you have. So I was just trying to find the exact spot where I noted that he said that that is Jackson. But anyway, but he has said on a number of occasions, actually, in his interviews in particular, that you cannot lose money in Bitcoin because its value is not pegged to the dollar or to any regulators or to nothing. In other words, because its value is pegged to its own amount of in circulation Bitcoin, which can only be mined to a maximum of 21 million. So unlike the dollar, which is no longer attached to gold or silver, and is just revalued constantly by the amount that are put in circulation, Bitcoin, it is argued, is not like that. And yet, as I keep asking, but its value is measured in US dollars. So when you say and measure the value of Bitcoin, people will always say it's at 40,000. It's going to get to 150,000. It's going to, but dollars. So I never understand. So, and if you want to, and the people who are making money on Bitcoin are making money because they're buying low and selling high and getting out, having cashed out in dollars. So I don't that part I'm not really clear on, and I would still like for somebody to get this explain this to me, because I've in all the videos and in all the literature and all of the debates I have privately or whatever. At this point, is not being made clear to me. So this one I'm specifically reaching out for help on. What gives Bitcoin value? Well, I'll say here, what gives Bitcoin value? Jackson says that Andre Antonopoulos branded Bitcoin the Internet of Money, which accurately describes this form of new currency. Bitcoin is valuable as a currency because it is a store of value, unit of account, and medium of exchange. The ability to use Bitcoin as a long-term investment without the interference of a third party also has a high value proposition. Since Bitcoin hit exchanges in 2010, speculators and investors have driven the price of Bitcoin from $0.06 to $9,733 during the writing of this book. Simply put, Bitcoin is the best performing asset in the world over the past decade, measured and the conclusion of which, the determination of which is a measurement of its value in US dollars. So if the US dollar collapses and disappears as Bitcoiners want, what then is the value of Bitcoin? It could, because at that point, its value can't be a long-term investment based on the value of the US dollar, which it is replacing and is devaluing and is useless, is what we're being told, is where we're headed. Or it's been made into a currency because organized political power made it that way. They're not going to adopt it as a currency because Black people bought it all up. And now you have to come through us, as Hill Harper keeps saying. That's not how it becomes a currency, which would then create its value. Its created value is political power and its imposition on other people, largely by the military. So, all right. But now this guy actually says something in terms of this question of the value of Bitcoin that I don't think folks advocating Bitcoin understand. I've had to watch this video several times to get to the point where I think I might understand it and I might not. So that's why I actually want to, share this and see if it makes sense. So anyway, he started off by, and let me just back it up and let's just start it again. Let's just start this part again. He's saying, I thought, as we're told, and this guy is a crypto investor. He's a Wall Street, he's a stock, he's into all of this stuff. So this is not, again, but he's saying, I thought Bitcoin was a hedge against the devaluing dollar. That is, anyway, so let's just.
Why did it fall? Here's a few reasons why. When interest rates go up, the value of holding safer investments becomes much more exciting. And the first things to sell off in a risky market are the riskiest assets, which are things like crypto. And then people park their money instead into safer dividend yielding stocks or maybe higher yielding bonds. A second possible reason.
So he's saying that, and he went through this earlier in the video in relationship to bonds and other investments. When interest rates go up, which is determined by an organized political entity, the Federal Reserve and the chairperson, et cetera, people who are investing all over the place in particular want to put their money in safer investments because the interest is too high. So they put their money in dollars, which he then says devalues Bitcoin. And I'm going to play that part again because even as
rates go up, the value of holding safer investments.
Hold on, one more time.
But this doesn't really explain why Bitcoin went down in value, because isn't Bitcoin supposed to be a hedge against inflation? Why did it fall? Here's a few reasons why. When interest rates go up, the value of holding safer investments becomes much more exciting.
Right.
And the first things to sell off in a risky market are the riskiest assets, which are things like crypto. And then people park their money instead into safer dividend yielding stocks or maybe higher yielding bonds. A second possible reason is that Bitcoin's value is sometimes not always, but is sometimes inversely correlated to the strength of the dollar. For example, we can look at something called the DXY index, which tracks the dollar's value. And in this chart, which I found, you can see that over a long period of time, whenever the value of the dollar goes up, the value of Bitcoin goes down. This is not always true, but again, over a long period of time, it tends to be true. And remember that whole federal fund rate thing we talked about in the beginning of the video? The cost for banks to borrow and lend their money to each other for overnight reserve requirements? Well, that plus the Federal Reserve selling their bonds, which increases rates, actually strengthens the value of the dollar. The reason is because investors from all over the world want to park their weaker currencies into a higher yielding one, which guarantees them a rate of return on their money that protects their value more so than a risky asset does, which is why whenever the dollar gets stronger, Bitcoin gets weaker.
Yes, he's getting stronger.
Reason number 3 is that if I'm an institutional investor who has billions of dollars that I'm managing for other people, I want to have a portfolio that has non-correlated assets, meaning they don't all move in the same direction with each other. So that way I can diversify my risk across all the other assets. It's kind of like a teeter-totter effect, right? It's one of the classic pieces of investing advice you get in the beginning, which is to own some stocks and some bonds. Because when stocks go up, bonds go down, and when bonds go up, stocks go down. So your risk is diversified. But since Bitcoin fell and the stock market fell, it reaffirms to those guys, at least for now, that Bitcoin is a very correlated risk-on asset. And if I'm a hedge fund investor, I might want to hold off on buying Bitcoin until I see that they don't move in the exact same direction to each other. I told you this was a crazy, confusing video.
All right. So again, it is, I've watched it so many times. I don't claim to fully understand it, but what I keep taking away from it is the same point that I keep trying to make, that, well, in part, that the value of what we're being told will save us as sovereign money is largely determined, its value is largely determined on whether, in large part, as he's putting here, institutional big-time investors. And institutional investors are people like BlackRock or entities like BlackRock. They're not even individuals. They're hedge funds and private equity groups that invest. Again, look up anything. BlackRock is in there, as if not the number one or the number two, with Vanguard and probably Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's group, in owning everything from Apple to Alphabet to Google to Netflix to Amazon, everything. If their investment in either the dollar or in Bitcoin has an impact on the value of the dollar or Bitcoin, it doesn't show, as he's saying there, that Bitcoin is uncorrelated and therefore a safe alternative. It's showing that it's basically the same thing as any other stock on the whatever. So the idea that A, Black people or any other oppressed, colonized group can catch up, or B, that this would lead to some form of revolutionary reorganization of the world or society or relationship to it, is fantasy. This is, it's, and again, to me, shows a gross misunderstanding of all of this in the claims of people like Jackson and others who put a radical politics onto what is a stock market investment. So that's sort of my point. In again, going back to this debate that Middleton invited me to and then doesn't apparently want to have. And he may be right that if he's arguing, because I don't even see Reggie Middleton making this argument, who's cited in here, by the way. Because as Jackson says here, Middleton, I don't even see doing this. What Jackson says, in addition to what I've already quoted, that ultimately you can't build a strong community without your own currency. Bitcoin is not our own currency. No currency we could create at this point would be valuable beyond our ability to have political power over the society and the broader world in which we are attempting to use it. So it's if Middleton and others are just saying, look, I'm making money, and here's, if you invest with me and invest a certain way, you might make some money. That's one thing. But when it's again pitched as a total solution, that's where I start to well, that's the only time I feel like it's important to raise the criticism. So then he does something in here also that happens all the time. Again, to this sort of the same point. Making references to Madam C.J. Walker and then Marcus Garvey, as if to suggest that this sort of, again, and even here where he's talking about people creating Garvey denominations, small denominations referred to. Lamar Wilson and Leif Taylor are Black developers who created ERC20 token, an ERC20 token called CJs after Madam C.J. Walker. The great Madam C.J. Walker. Smaller denominations are referred to as Garveys after Marcus Garvey to remind users of our rich history. I don't know to what extent that reminds anybody of a rich history, but it's a rich history of, however you want to look at it, either of bad capitalist business that abuses Black investors and leads to nothing, or an insufficient amount of organized political power to make that exchange or the stock offerings and the shipping line creations and the passport creations of Garvey mean anything. Either way, Bitcoin isn't solving those issues. And Garvey wasn't even, well, I guess, I don't know. I mean, in that sense, I was going to say Garvey was at least calling for investments in Black-owned businesses. Bitcoin is not a Black-owned business. More importantly, as I'm also going to get to before we wrap up, the exchanges and the platforms are eerily consolidated in the same way that we are being told they're not. As we're being promised, Bitcoin and blockchain is a peer-to-peer, anonymous, sovereign exchange between individuals. With the development of smart contracts, which are, again, just if I understand that, more or less just programs or algorithms that create specific promissory notes between two people or groups exchanging. Then, in other words, instead of me giving you some money and saying, or I'm going to, writing a contract and saying, I'm going to pay you for this or that. It's a sort of a digital program that says, once your end of the task is executed, my transfer of this money will be, made complete. So it's just a promise that it's, in other words, but again, none of that is owned by Black people unless Middleton's new patented contract creator for capital exchange is, takes off, which he says it will. But even then, that means one Black man owns one thing, someone who is clearly against regulation, clearly for, talks all the time, I am a capitalist, I'm for the free market, I am for entrepreneurialism. So him becoming a billionaire or better, I don't see how that is a collective, but he's not making that. So to his credit, I don't see Middleton making that promise of helping the Black community. Now, so here again is a problem with the basis of Jackson's argument here, and why I started again with his chapter 2 on Black entrepreneurialism. That his argument around not only in the mythology of the circulating Black dollar is still an issue. That is, as he says here, circulation of the Black dollar between businesses and consumers has been the goal of Black entrepreneurs for years, and of course it has. Black entrepreneurs want the Black dollar. The problem is there aren't enough Black dollars to help those businesses expand in ways that they would want, and there's no reciprocating result that helps the community who have helped or supported that Black business. So Jackson says to withdraw what should happen is that our black dollars we should withdraw from the hyperinflated banking system, acquire Bitcoin, and circulate that wealth among our black businesses. So this is where he starts to make, this is his where he advocates a solution here. And why? So apparently StreamYard is dropping our streams on Twitter and Twitch. I don't know what happened there, but you know, anyway. One quick second. Sorry about that. Turn this up a little bit. The sun was starting to get a little bit in the way. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay. So this is where again, his advocacy becomes again more clear and along those same black capitalist entrepreneurial lines. So now he's saying, because we don't circulate our dollars properly, we should now abandon that anyway. Take as much of our black money as possible out of banks and buy Bitcoin, and then use that Bitcoin to purchase from black businesses. This change in doing business begins with consumers. Some may think that if they see businesses accept Bitcoin, then people will acquire Bitcoin to make payments. However, I believe that business owners are less likely to take on the risk of accepting a historically volatile currency without a demand from consumers. So we have to take our money out of banks, buy Bitcoin, and then demand from black-owned businesses that they accept Bitcoin. And then he goes into this question, again, this point of the reason that this is good is because what would happen if the money you spent increased in value over time to the consensus of other people who wanted to spend that currency as well? This is how good money works. So instead of, as he points out, using a dollar in the US dollar, which loses value over time because of inflation, as opposed to Bitcoin, if we use Bitcoin, that money will not devalue over time, and the money you spend will actually increase over time. But again, as I keep asking, increase in value on what basis? On the US dollar? And that's why I just showed the video. Again, I'll have the link in the so that, you know, but where he's showing again, he's making a number of reveals, that is that the investment guy, that are important here. One, the world is investing in this. Institutional investors are investing, people who have billions of dollars who invest in all kinds of stuff, and they are investing in crypto and in Bitcoin as they would in any other part of the stock market. So global exchange in the stock market here, and the global exchange more broadly. So, and they are using Bitcoin or playing Bitcoin off of the dollar and vice versa, based on when one is up and the other goes down, they have some money in each, and, you know, their portfolios more or less stay the same. So again, even when he's talking about the circulation of Bitcoin versus the dollar, and you know, and again, the reason there is inflation is, again, because of the political power that has not only adopted and developed the dollar, and imposed the dollar on this country and around the world, but that determines through interest rates and regulation that there will be inflation. Now, as I've tried to point out with the buying power argument, this is done intentionally, as George Jackson laid out very plainly years ago. This is done to make sure that more money can be generated for those who own the economy, while always maintaining the value of what we're paid at an even keel, at a steady or decreasing level. So the point is about managing population. It's not about simply making money. It's about making sure that there is this permanent gap or divide. But let me explain. If we acquire Bitcoin as consumers and prefer to use Bitcoin instead of the dollar, mainstream adoption of Bitcoin payments will occur among Black-owned businesses, which raises the demand and the value of Bitcoin. Outside communities who want to do business with Black community will have to adjust to our preferred crypto economy, which raises demand, increases the value of Bitcoin, and ends with the consumer buying power increasing. So ends with the consumer's buying power increasing. Again, buying power is not economic strength. It's a measurement of the ability of any one community or any group within society to spend money on other people's products. That's what buying power measures. So he's incorrect there as well. He's mimicking the Black capitalist entrepreneurial mythologies about the circulating dollar, about the sovereignty of, well, now adding sovereignty of currency, an overemphasis on the value of a segregated economy. And then the idea that there is a buying power that consumers have and can impose. Now, as I already showed, we already went back and referred to again, an increase in Black-owned businesses runs parallel with a decrease in how much those businesses capture in terms of national revenue spent on all businesses. So how he could argue that Black people as consumers taking our money out of banks, putting it into Bitcoin, and then demanding that businesses accept that Bitcoin when our buying power or when our buying power is, again, a measurement of what can be spent on other other people's businesses, and is itself a mere fraction. I believe I had it at 1/8 of white people's buying power. We just reported the other day, it is now being compared as commensurate with LGBTQ communities' buying power, or Latin America's buying power. But the amount of money total being captured by Black businesses decreases as those businesses go up. So, which shows a relative irrelevance of those businesses and of the consumer supporting those businesses who are mostly Black, which is why they capture less and don't expand, because Black people don't have any money. It inverts, again, what could be considered logical in our understanding of where the power in this relationship comes. This idea that people who have no money, whose businesses, even when they increase, lose the amount of money they bring in compared to the national amount spent on businesses overall. When the overall condition of the Black community is decreasing materially vis-a-vis history or white America. How this could then be turned around into we will be in control. Again, Hill Harper has the same argument. If we all have 1 million Satoshis or 500 US dollars, we will control this cryptocurrency that the world is trading in, that BlackRock is investing in, that JP Morgan is investing in, that Jackson will himself say is a sign that Bitcoin is being more adopted and taking over. So if it is becoming that way, and the already dominant are now getting into the game, who have already started the game, because remember, as we've been talking about for months now, it is the billionaires that are being created from all of this were either billionaires to begin with and are almost all white anyway. So again, it's this example shows an increase in spending power, saving balance for the future, and show Black-owned businesses who decide to accept it. Okay, no, that, yeah, all right, made that point. Okay, let me just get to the next point here. By the way, all of this, again, just sort of to the point I'm getting at, all of this investment that he said, because remember what he just said there. Wait a minute, where was I? If let me explain. If we acquire Bitcoin as consumers and prefer to use Bitcoin instead of the dollar, mainstream adoption of Bitcoin payments will occur among Black-owned businesses, which raises demand and the value of Bitcoin. That's the importance of that line. Because when the value of Bitcoin goes up, this is who benefits. As we've talked about before, it's the global billionaire wealth, which overall has surged over the course of the pandemic. They've made $4 trillion during the pandemic. And with the cost of vaccinating the world estimated at $142 billion, they've made $4 trillion. All right. But the point I'm bringing this up, the reason because I quoted from here about one of the people mentioned in this story, Mr. Brian Armstrong. So let's just skip on down, because number 10 on this list, and here's just some of the people just around the world, just making their money, but specifically number 10 of the top billionaires who made their portion of that $4 trillion just during this pandemic is Brian Armstrong, U.S. chief executive of Coinbase, the largest cryptocurrency exchange in the country. Wealth increased 550% from 1 billion to 6.5 billion during the pandemic. So Brian Armstrong agrees with Mr. Jackson here, in the sense that on a global level, not just with Black businesses, and from Armstrong's perspective, and anyone wanting to make money in this, it can't just be about Black people, because Black people do not have any money. Black people do not have enough money as consumers or owners to drive any of this or to stop any of this. That's why I keep saying political power is our only opportunity here. That's our only potential strength, because economically, we're relatively irrelevant. But that is, Armstrong agrees with Jackson here. Payments will occur if people start using Bitcoin and consumers and businesses start exchanging in Bitcoin. The demand for and value of Bitcoin will go up. And what does that mean? More people are trading in Bitcoin. More people are going to Coinbase and exchanging and creating wealth for people like Brian Armstrong, who get a percentage of the exchanges and the transactions that occur on one of the leading exchanges in the country. And I'm going to come back to this point in a few minutes, because it's even more consolidated than that. Because as we keep being told, and maybe I'll just jump there now, because as we keep being told, everything is being decentralized. We're getting away from central banks. We're getting away from the ruling elite and governments. And again, I don't know why anybody would want to get away from regulation. The point should be we should. That's part of that pessimism, that political pessimism. I'm too scared of actual power, so I just want to be able to sneak around and exchange some stuff on the side. But the reality is, if our only strength is in political organization and the assumption of political power, it is not in some sort of anonymous exchange or contract. It is not in the avoidance of regulation. It is the imposition of regulation, to say we all contribute to the wealth that that the world is generating. But only those handful of billionaires and trillionaires or soon to be trillionaires walk away with it. That requires regulation. That requires political power. So when I hear people like Reggie Middleton and others running around saying freedom will occur through a lack of regulation, that's libertarian. That's capitalist white business talk. That's not Black liberation. That's not even a multiracial leveling of the playing. That's not workers of the world uniting. So once again, and I definitely will put this article in the chat, in the show notes, because it's wild. And it was sent me by, again, I continue to do this, and I apologize. I don't remember who sent this to me, but it's written by a self-described cryptographer, and you can check out, I believe it's a him, but you can check out their website, moxie.org. A lot of fascinating stuff, and this article is truly fascinating, written from the perspective of, again, I don't know them to be a revolutionary, but somebody who is clearly aware of how the technology works. And I like this line here that they are interested in the history of the memory, that crypto used to mean cryptography, as opposed to cryptocurrency. And cryptography, of course, is intelligence, spying, that kind of stuff. But this is his overall argument here, is that the new technology of blockchain that we are constantly being told by people like Mr. Jackson and others is what will free us. What this author is saying, similar to something that I've been arguing and pointing to without this level of detail and expertise, is that we're seeing the same level of consolidation being replicated. So, for instance, whether it's we're being told to invest in something that billionaires have already invested in, and that, yes, while more by percentage Black people are investing in cryptocurrency than white and Latin Americans are, that to me again remains as a sign of what that investor we was even talking about in the video clip I played. Big time investors, institutional investors, certainly, as opposed to what are called retail investors, they are diverse in their portfolios. They are going to be less likely to have a bulk of their investment have to only occurred recently and then to be put mostly into cryptocurrency. Of course, Black people, particularly because of so much of this kind of specifically targeted promotion, are being told to. When I go on YouTube and look at all the videos and all the discussion about cryptocurrency, and there's tremendous amounts, obviously, most of it is white people giving investment advice to their predominantly white audiences with the same traditional idea. I'm a hustler. I know how this thing works. They don't say it this way, but I'm an investor. I'm a Wall Street guy or person. I know how this stuff works. Invest with me. Invest. Watch my channel to learn how to invest. I'm getting in here. This is what you should do. That's how they're approaching it. Get in and get this money with me if you can. When it comes to Black people, it's whether it's Spike Lee saying it's the revolution, whether it's Jackson with allusions to Garvey and sovereignty, we're being told this is your way out, just like same with buying power. Although I think that's slowly changing as well, but with other groups being more incorporated. But the point is, buying power is used to measure advertisers' ad placement. When it comes to Black people, it becomes this is your pathway to freedom. So anyway, what this author is saying is that there is this tremendous amount of consolidation at the level, particularly at the level of the technology that drives all of this at the blockchain level, which we are all being told is where we need to get, which is going to provide us freedom. So one point that they make, and I think this is interesting and I think probably true, but certainly is with everything else up for debate. People don't want to run their own servers and never will. So the point being, we always want to rely on other people all we want to do is get on here and do our thing and have our fun. We don't want to run the server. You run the server. Somebody else run the server. If something is truly decentralized, it becomes very difficult to change and often remains stuck in time. This is an interesting argument. The argument is if we don't regulate and get some sort of centralized power over something, a new technology included, it doesn't expand. So the idea that we're going to have a decentralized Web3, and he goes into the whole thing about the Web 1, 2, and 3. It's more or less about the levels of communication and exchange. But and we're in Web 2 now, or 2.5, as some say, and headed towards a Web 3 with maybe some of it already existing. That is full engagement. Particularly, they're saying blockchain is Web 3 because it's this me to you to me with no intermediary, no, or so they claim. But his point here is, while we're being told, no, decentralized, we don't want the governments, we don't want the regulate, we don't want the banks. He said, yeah, but if it's decentralized, it's going to be very difficult to change, and it's going to get stuck in time. Interesting. Now, again, I'm not doing the argument justice. I'll invite people to read this. It's a pretty long thing, but he goes on. One thing that has always felt strange to me about the cryptocurrency world is the lack of attention to the client-server interface. When people talk about blockchains, they talk about distributed trust, leaderless consensus, and all the mechanics of how that works, but often gloss over the reality that clients ultimately can't participate in those mechanics. All the network diagrams are of servers. The trust model is between servers. Everything is about servers. Blockchains are designed to be a network of peers, but not designed such that it's really possible for your mobile device or your browser to be one of those peers. Ethereum actually refers to servers as clients. So there's not even a word for an actual untrusted client-server interface that will have to exist somewhere, and no acknowledgement that if successful, there will ultimately be billions more clients than servers. That's deep. Okay. Anyway, a server. But as we know, people don't want to run their own servers. As it happens, companies have emerged that sell API. And I had to look that up. It's something, I have to look it up again. Something about interface. Uh, dang. Something interface. Where is the application programming interface? Because I don't think I went back and looked. I don't think he lays that out in here. So anyway, as it happens, companies have emerged that sell application programming interfaces, or application programming interface access to an Ethereum node they run as a service, along with providing analytics, enhanced APIs they built on top of the default Ethereum APIs, and access to historical transactions, which sounds familiar. At this point, there are basically two companies. This is really where I start to become a little more clear. So walk with me, if you would, for just a moment. At this point, there are basically two companies. Almost all distributed apps, or distributed or decentralized apps, DApps, use either Infura or Alchemy in order to interact with the blockchain. In fact, even when you connect a wallet like MetaMask to a DApp, and the DApp interacts with the blockchain via your wallet, MetaMask is just making calls to Infura. This was surprising to me. So much of the work, energy, and time has gone into creating a trustless distributed consensus mechanism, but virtually all clients that wish to access it do so by simply trusting the outputs from these two companies without any further verification. It also doesn't seem like the best privacy situation. Imagine if every time you interacted with the website in Chrome, your request first went to Google before being routed to the destination and back. That's the situation with Ethereum today. So he goes on, he talks about how he created his own NFT to sort of demonstrate how some of all this works. That is a non-fungible token. I know that's not exactly what we're talking about in terms of Bitcoin, but I'm getting to, really, my point is about the underlying technology and the consolidated situation there as well, which we're being told is being dismantled by Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. What he says here about NFTs is fascinating. We should probably come back to that, and I'll have to come back to that another time because but it's basically saying you don't even own anything. Anyway, it's just creating wealth because people are just selling links. Is basically selling, and then you don't even know, and then you're not in control of it. Like OpenSea took away his NFT. Anyway, OpenSea Exchange, that is this an exchange. Given the history of why Web 1 became Web 2, what seems strange to me about Web 3 is that technologies like Ethereum have been built with many of the same implicit trappings as Web 1. To make these technologies usable, the space is consolidating around platforms. Again, people who will run servers for you and iterate on the new functionality that emerges: Infura, OpenSea, Coinbase, Etherscan. So in other words, this is a much more technical look at it, but it's the point that I've been raising. At least I understand it to be making the point I've been raising with far less technical specificity for a long time. The same consolidated central institutions are reemerging. As I showed, even when we're being told of the black-owned Black Wall Street wallet, when you go to that wallet, you have to go through two other white-owned corporations who give you access to what's in your wallet or to the blockchain that your coins are stored on. We just showed you how the head of Coinbase just made $500 billion because people, including Black people, are going on there and buying Bitcoin for their freedom. I think we should expect this kind of platform consolidation to happen, and given the inevitability, design systems that give us what we want when that's how things are organized. Reason I highlighted this is that we should accept this kind of platform consolidation to happen because that's what happens in capitalism. That's what happens when the politics aren't changed. And on some level, that's what should happen. There should be a consolidated, regulated method of exchange that protects and monitors and ensures the proper redistribution of all that's created and gone on there. We shouldn't want a world where people are encouraged to buy and sell in anonymity and secrecy, where there's no oversight, no regulation, where there's no taxation, where there's no insurance, where there's no redistribution, where there's I don't think we should want that. I also like here that he refers to this as a gold rush. Now he's talking specifically about NFTs, but I think the same could be said about Bitcoin. That what we're seeing now is just everybody rushing to buy it to get in, and a lot of people are going to lose their money. And certainly the gold rush did not lead to some redistributive wealth creation for a whole bunch of people, and it certainly didn't overturn the relationships between Black people in the state. Anyway, I'll leave it. I'll leave that part there for now. But and definitely encourage people to read that whole thing. I might. Oh yeah, there were a few other things here. So now, so there was another interesting contradiction here in Mr. Jackson's book that I think speaks to sort of the problem that we have, or one of the problems that we have here. Let's see. Blockchain and politics. It's such an odd. This is an odd section for. So first is he starts off by saying South Korean Conservative Party (LKP) has launched a blockchain-based political party. But then listen to but then what he lists here as what the party does speaks to everything about my criticism of our engagement with crypto and how we're approaching it, and shows what should be done when you are politically organized. Now, I'm not saying I agree with the politics of this group, but I'm just saying what an organized political group would do. So their use of the blockchain is to record meeting results of the central and local party assemblies, record and evaluate the key performance of members' activities. Because remember, when you put something on the blockchain, everybody can see it. You can't change it. Voting process for elections of the party, online system and transparency, a petition system to prevent fraud and manipulation. Those are the 4 things that he lists that the party is doing. Nothing on there about economic exchange, investment, nothing claiming they're going to solve their people's problems with investment and crypto and blockchain and all of that. They're using blockchain like, okay, it's protected, it's whatever, it's transparent, which again is sort of that contradiction, because everybody's talking about the anonymity of the blockchain, but everything is stored there, can't be edited, and can be seen by anybody. So, but his argument, that is Jackson's, is that we get involved in blockchain and Bitcoin. And then he says projects like Coin Center advocate for blockchain technology at the national level, and many Bitcoin and cryptocurrency groups advocate for adoption at the state and local level. If the Black American community can begin to join these groups and contact politicians, we may start to see a shift in the political world. So wait a minute. I thought Bitcoin is what made politics irrelevant, or was going to create the wealth that was going to allow us to engage the political system as wealthy, powerful people and then make things happen. But here we're being told we have to organize to advocate that politicians accept the adoption of Bitcoin so that we can engage and increase the use of Bitcoin and make our money. If I didn't know better, I'd be saying this reads like someone who already got in on Bitcoin and needs more people to be able to get in so that what they've already purchased that we can never catch up to can increase in value. And that's why I keep writing in the notes, Ponzi. It's a politically protected, encouraged Ponzi scheme, which is really all Wall Street is. Let's face it, whoever can raise the most money will usually win the political race. No broke boys allowed in the political game. Donations to politicians have traditionally been fiat-based, but recently a new wave of elected officials and candidates began adopting Bitcoin for donation. Who's on that list? Greg Abbott, governor of Texas. Bob Barr, Georgia U.S. rep or candidate. Rand Paul. Gavin Newsom, governor of California. Will Hammer, candidate for U.S. rep in Virginia. I mean, so now, I mean, the first joke I have, I mean, I just like, so now we have to support more Rand Pauls to get Bitcoin so that we can catch up to Rand Paul and then overtake Rand Paul. Now, again, if this was a book about just investment, fine. But it's this constant, this is Black people's path to freedom. And this is where the contradiction is. If we have if we have the organized political ability to influence politicians, why should it be for the adoption of Bitcoin? My point would be organize politically and then impose demands for everything: redistribution, land, a reorganization of how wealth is defined and created. If you want to start more pragmatically, I mean, the simple basics: Medicare for all, increased unionism, increase minimum wage, redistribute the military budget, student debt removal, free college. I mean, instead, we're being told to organize politically to impose a political will on politicians for more Bitcoin. So there is that recognition of political power, the need for political power, and the only way to get political power is to not be one of the poor boys coming into the game, because no poor boys allowed in the game. But the only way to influence the political world to let Black people in to not be poor anymore is to influence the political world to adopt more Bitcoin usage. Then he does a lot of the same thing. Black athletes and artists should start adopting more Bitcoin, forcing it to go mainstream. The Black church. So this isn't James Foreman's. What do they call it? What would they call it? I'll check the chat in a second. Somebody I know, but this isn't James Foreman's call that Black churches redistribute the wealth they're taking out of the community back into Black communities as part of a reparations package. This is having the Black church accept donations and payments in Bitcoin. So anyway, Black business owners received less than 1% of the money invested by venture capitalists in 2017. Black women are awarded even less funding, only receiving 0.2% of all startup funds. The blockchain web application will solve this problem by matching Black business owners with investors around the world. That's part of his argument about how what he's calling the blockchain web app. So it's not owning blockchain. It's a web application that's going to called blockchain, which is misleading because it's not blockchain ownership. So it's not blockchain development even. It's encouragement that a web app, much like the Black Wall Street web app from Hill Harper, will be a conduit through which Black money can really be extracted into and incorporated into white money. But here the claim is so that black businesses can be introduced to venture capital, as if the problem with Black adoption or the Black businesses receiving venture capital is venture capital can't find them. It's also the suggestion that the pathway is through venture capital investment. Anyway, that I think basically does it for my thoughts on this book. I think I've shown the major problems that I have with it and shown some of the misunderstanding. I got through all those notes. Yeah. So, and I want to say, obviously, that I'm finally finished with this issue, but maybe not. Obviously not. I'll keep coming back up. But just again to reiterate, the problem with these kinds of books and claims is that they are attaching Black radical, Black liberation politics or symbolism to old reactionary Black capitalist, Black entrepreneurial claims, and which just again returns us back to what has been encouraged and propagated intentionally through the corporate world, through the political world, obviously through people like Richard Nixon, as we talked about, repeatedly. It is those entities that have willfully, consciously said, we don't want them thinking of Black power like Kwame Ture talks about Black power. We want them to redefine Black power as Black business and Black mainstream politics. That's what was being argued here. And much of the Bitcoin advocacy centers around those rebranding or repackaging of old Black capitalist ideas. And a lot of them that we've debunked on this channel, specifically the origins and the propulsion of Black capitalism as an idea, the circulating Black dollar, and so many other related issues here have been and I'll put all the links to those below as well. So Anyway, quick, let me just see if there are any comments or questions I can get to, or criticisms. Please, if I missed them, drop them back in the chat real quick, and I will try to get to them real quick. I have at least a few more minutes here. Oh, am I being challenged to a debate? Black Bitcoin bubble blower? I mean, I'll debate any. I mean, I'm good. I don't mind doing that. I don't. You know, and Geechee Yaw is inviting that to be the host. He says he has over 43,000 on the Geechee Motivator platform, and is willing to host that debate. I'm happy to do that. If that's, you know, I mix what I like at gmail.org. Email me and we can. But if there is anything that you know, I can, you know. I need to clarify and deepen my understanding of blockchain technology. That's probably true, but what is it that I'm missing? I mean, be specific. Help me out. What is it that I'm missing in that's being said about that or not about blockchain that I'm missing? It proposes anonymity, and increasingly that's being shown to be not so true. Is it that I don't get into enough of the detail between proof of work and proof of stake? You know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, that misses the point. What I do understand about the blockchain is that it is the technology on which all of this crypto stuff is happening, and access to it has been consolidated. Just like everything else, just like access to the internet has been consolidated. And the wealth being created from it is being created and going to the same people. So, I mean, help me out. Be a little, you know, maybe send me an email. What is it? Or tell me that, or repost a comment that I may have missed. Like what am I not? I mean, I'm sure there's plenty I don't understand in terms of the mechanism, but the political and economic outcomes, I don't know, seem pretty clear. That's hilarious. Yeah. What's in your wallet? Shout out to Omawale Africa for that one. That was a good one. Yeah, again, my fundamental argument about all technology is that they don't change social relationships; they enhance them. So again, I've argued and sort of shown my work on that as best I can, saying, you know, for instance, I go always back to the work in terms of communication studies of Harold Innis, the communication, the bias of communication. You know, but it's that kind of approach. When new technology emerges, power is consolidated around that technology, and it enhances in their capability to extend those. You know, so I get it. Blockchain can be used for other things beyond cryptocurrencies. That's fine. I'm sure it can. Make claim about blockchain more, but then you be claiming again. I maybe misspoke here or there, but please be specific. What have I said about Bitcoin that only applies to blockchain and vice versa? Yeah, I don't know. I would, you know, help me out with that. Help me out with that. The solution for me is we have to organize politically and get political power. Now, how that happens, I don't know. Number one, I don't think that's for a discussion on a live, but it's to say that, but that's it. Who decides how wealth is created and where it goes? For hiding Biko. I hid Biko? What did I hide Biko? Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Help me out with that one too. I hide Biko. If I hide Biko, then I should be criticized. If I'm somehow contributing. Oh, behind you in that picture. You're right. You're right. And that joint that was brought to me as a gift from Azania too. My man, Double O African brought that back. I'll make that adjustment. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I got to fix that. You're right. I got to move some stuff around. Anyway, I'm not, I like I said, I appreciate all of you, and please, if you have criticism or anything, either email me at imixwhatilike@gmail.com, or like my man Pierre says,
put it in the comments.
And I appreciate everybody. Definitely, please go check out the first hour we did with Dr. Todd Stephen Burrows, and those who are seeing this now. I really appreciate you coming through. Those who are seeing this later, appreciate you as well. And those who are hearing this on all your favorite podcast platforms, thanks to you as well. We'll be back with the full Remix Morning Show crew tomorrow morning for the Remix Morning Show and all week here at Black Power Media. So definitely stay tuned. Please go back and make sure you check out Sundays if you missed it from the Ear Doctor last night, or Warrior Class on Saturday. I caught at least some of that, or both of them actually, and they are fire. What the conversation Balagoon and then we're having around illness and recovery and defense. I mean, I really appreciate what they're doing. So please go check that out as well. And everything else, make sure you like, share, subscribe, click the join button if you can. Definitely hit the bell so you get all your notifications. And we'll catch you next time here for more. I Mix What I Like. Black Power Media, like Fred Hampton used to say, peace if you're willing to fight for it. Peace, everybody. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.